The nurse's face told me something was wrong before she even spoke. I was still groggy from anesthesia, the incision from my tumor removal surgery throbbing beneath fresh bandages. "Mrs. Mitchell," she said, her voice unnaturally controlled. "There's someone insisting on seeing you. Says it's urgent. A Mr. Cooper? He claims he's your real estate agent?" Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Real estate agent? The words didn't make sense through the fog of pain medication. I had no appointments with any real estate agents, not today, not while I was having a grapefruit-sized mass removed from my abdomen. "Ms. Mitchell," a balding man in an ill-fitting suit appeared behind the nurse, clutching a leather portfolio. "I need to confirm. There seems to be an issue with the property transfer. Your husband assured me you were aware of the sale, but—" "Sale?" My voice cracked. "What sale?" The man's eager smile faltered. "Your home on Maple Drive? The closing is tomorrow. Your husband handled everything, but there's a discrepancy with the—" The nurse intervened. "Sir, this patient just came out of major surgery. You need to leave immediately." As the man backed away, apologizing profusely, I caught a glimpse of familiar letterhead on the documents in his portfolio. Our address printed in bold at the top, followed by the words, "Final Sale Agreement." I fumbled for my phone with trembling fingers, ignoring the pull of my IV. 3 missed calls from Sophie, my sister. 6 text messages. The most recent one read, "Becca, call me now. Moving trucks at your house. Nate says you're downsizing. After your surgery?" The taxi pulled up to what should have been my home of 12 years. But instead of the familiar comfort of our Victorian in Portland's Laurelhurst neighborhood, I faced a house I barely recognized. A sold sign stood triumphantly on the front lawn, the realtor's face beaming beneath it. 3 days after my surgery, against my doctor's explicit instructions to rest, I was standing outside my own home because my husband of 12 years had apparently sold it while I was unconscious on an operating table. "Ma'am, do you need help with your bags?" the taxi driver asked, eyeing me with concern. I must have looked a sight, still pale, moving gingerly to protect my incision, rainwater plastering my hair to my face in the typical Portland spring downpour. "No," I managed. "Just wait here, please." I needed to see inside, needed to confirm that this wasn't some elaborate misunderstanding. I trudged up the walkway, each step sending pain shooting through my abdomen. When I tried my key in the front door, the lock refused to turn. Changed. Of course he'd changed the locks. I pressed my face against the window, cupping my hands around my eyes to block the glare. The living room where we'd hosted dinner parties and Christmas gatherings was half empty. Some furniture remained, but the bookshelves my grandfather had built, gone. My research awards and diplomas, gone. The rain intensified, soaking through my light jacket. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Nate, my husband's name and photo illuminated the screen, the picture showing us on vacation in Hawaii 2 years earlier. We looked happy. Had we been? I let it go to voicemail, then listened immediately. "Becca, honey, why aren't you at the hospital? The doctor called. You checked yourself out." "Are you insane? You just had major surgery. I'm handling everything, remember? The downsizing discussion we had? The condo I showed you photos of? It's all taken care of. Call me back immediately." Downsizing discussion? Condo photos? These were fictional conversations that had never occurred. I leaned against the porch column for support, pain medication wearing thin, surgical sight throbbing with each heartbeat. The sold sign mocked me, raindrops racing down its glossy surface. 12. Years in this house, 12 years of marriage, and Nate had erased it all while surgeons were removing a tumor from my body. I called Sophie. "Becca? Oh my God, where are you? Jamie and I have been trying to reach you." "I'm at the house. I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Or what used to be the house. Sophie, he sold it. While I was in surgery, he sold our home. Stay right there, Sophie commanded, her restaurateur voice breaking through, the tone that could silence a kitchen full of rowdy line cooks. Don't move. Jamie and I are 15 minutes away. Does Nate know you're there? No, A sleek black Tesla pulled into the driveway and my heart sank. He does now. He just arrived. Put me on speaker, Sophie instructed. I pressed the speaker button as Nate emerged from his car, his expression morphing from concern to irritation when he saw me standing on the porch. Rebecca! What the hell? You should be in the hospital. He jogged up the walkway, seemingly oblivious to the rain. His designer shoes splashed through puddles that would have normally sent him into a fit about leather care. Do you have any idea how dangerous it is to leave post-surgery? Get in the car. I'm taking you back right now. Sophie's voice rang out from my phone. Don't you dare touch her, Nate. What kind of monster sells his wife's home while she's having a tumor removed? Nate's jaw tightened. He reached for my phone. Give me that. Sophie has no idea what she's talking about. I clutched the phone tighter, stepping back. Don't. Just don't. Tell me what's happening. Tell me why there's a sold sign on our lawn and why my key doesn't work. We discussed this, he said, his voice taking on the patient tone he used when explaining complex financial matters to me, despite my PhD and position managing research budgets in the millions. The housing market is peaking. We're downsizing now that it's just us. The new place is perfect, modern, low maintenance. You'll love it once you see it. I never agreed to this, I said, each word deliberate. We never discussed selling. You did, he insisted, producing his own phone and scrolling frantically. Here, look at these texts. You said the condo looked nice. He thrust the screen toward me. There were indeed texts from Becca approving condo photos, but the language, the phrasing, none of it sounded like me. And the date. I squinted at the timestamp. These are from 2 hours after I went into surgery, I said quietly. I was unconscious, Nate. His face went blank for a moment before rearranging into an expression of concern. You must be confused. From the medication, honey. Come on, let's get you somewhere dry. The condo isn't ready yet, but I've booked us a hotel. She's not going anywhere with you. Sophie's voice crackled through the phone speaker. Through the rain, I could see her Subaru screeching to a halt behind the taxi. My sister emerged like an avenging angel, her partner Jamie close behind. This is between me and my wife, Nate snapped. Your wife who you're apparently impersonating via text? Sophie advanced up the walkway. At just over 5 feet tall, my sister still managed to project the authority of someone twice her size. Years of running kitchens had taught her how to command respect with a glance. Jamie, tall and broad-shouldered with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, said nothing. His eyes, however, assessed the situation with the careful precision that had made him one of Portland's most sought-after cybersecurity experts. He stayed beside me, a silent human shield. I sent those texts to our real estate agent so the sale wouldn't be held up while Becca was recovering, Nate explained, his tone reasonable, corporate. Board meeting Nate. It was the prudent financial decision. The market— Stop, I interrupted. Just stop. Where are my things? My research materials? My mother's paintings? A flicker of something, guilt, annoyance, crossed Nate's face. In storage, all safe. I want the key, now. Becca, you're not thinking clearly. The medication, the storage key, Nate, and the code. Now. My voice didn't waver despite the pain radiating through my abdomen. Something was very wrong here, beyond even the unauthorized sale of our home. You need to rest, Nate insisted. We can deal with this tomorrow. Sophie stepped between us. Give her the key or I swear to God I will call the police and report theft. Theft? Nate scoffed. It's our stuff. My research materials are property of Pacific Northwest Medical Center, I said quietly. That's theft of intellectual property, and the university will press charges. Something in my tone must have convinced him. Nate reached into his pocket and reluctantly handed over a key fob. Storage Unit 447, Cedar Mill Storage Center. But Becca, you're making a big mistake. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I'm trying to secure our future. Our future, I repeated hollowly. The rain had soaked through my clothes entirely now, chilling me to the bone. You don't get to decide that unilaterally. Come on, Sophie said gently, placing her arm around my shoulders. Let's get you somewhere dry. Jamie? Jamie nodded, guiding me toward their car. My legs felt weak, my surgical site screaming in protest at the movement. This is ridiculous, Nate called after us. Rebecca, get back here. I paused, turning, slowly to face my husband of 12 years, the man who had held my hand through the terrifying diagnosis, who had promised to take care of everything while I recovered. The man who had sold our home while I lay unconscious. You know what's interesting, Nate? I said, my voice carrying clearly through the rain. You're so focused on securing our financial future that you never bothered to read the deed transfer. From last year. His expression shifted from frustration to confusion. What deed transfer? The one where I used my grandmother's inheritance to buy out the remaining mortgage, I replied. The one where I transferred the deed to my name only, for tax purposes. Remember how you said you trusted me to handle it because you were too busy with your development deals? The color drained from Nate's face. You're lying. Am I? Call Mr. Cooper. Ask him whose signature he needs to legally complete the sale. As Sophie helped me into her car, I caught a glimpse of Nate frantically dialing his phone, his perfectly tailored suit now clinging to him in the downpour, making him look smaller somehow, diminished. Did you really transfer the deed? Sophie? Whispered as she closed the car door. I leaned back against the headrest, closing my eyes as exhaustion and pain washed over me. Yes. And that's just the beginning of what he doesn't know. Jamie started the car, the windshield wipers creating a rhythmic soundtrack to Nate's growing panic on our former lawn. I watched through the rain-streaked window as the man I had promised to spend my life with received the news that would unravel the carefully constructed lie he'd been building. The first domino had fallen, and I was just getting started. The guest room in Sophie and Jamie's downtown loft became my war room. 3 days after the confrontation at the house, I was propped up in bed, surrounded by laptops, legal pads, and pain medication that I used more sparingly than recommended. Clear-headedness was more important than comfort right now. You really shouldn't be doing this, Sophie chided, bringing in a tray with bone broth and sourdough from her restaurant. You should be resting. I'll rest when I understand what's happening, I replied, accepting the mug of steaming broth gratefully. The rich aroma helped center me. Jamie, what did you find? Jamie looked up from his laptop, his expression grim. You were right to be suspicious about those text messages. They didn't come from your phone, they came from a burner, but they were sent from an IP address matching your home network. He was in our house, using our Wi-Fi, pretending to be me, I translated, the betrayal settling into my bones colder than the rain had been. There's more, Jamie continued. I've been looking into Nate's company accounts. Can you do that legally? Sophie interjected, ever the pragmatist. Jamie smiled thinly. Let's just say I know people who owe me favors. And what they found isn't pretty. Cascade Development has been moving large sums of money into shell corporations. The pattern started about 8 months ago. 8 months ago. Right around when my first symptoms appeared. Before the diagnosis. Before the surgery. How much money? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. All of it, Jamie replied. Your joint savings, the business cash reserves, and there's something else. A mortgage on the Laurelhurst house taken out 4 months ago. $2.5 million. My breath caught. That's impossible. I paid off the mortgage last year with my grandmother's inheritance. According to these records, there's a new one, and it's not in both your names. It's just in yours. Cold understanding crept over me. He forged my signature. He mortgaged a house that wasn't his to mortgage. Sophie swore colorfully, chef's vocabulary on full display. That's why he needed to sell it so quickly. The payments would have come due, and I would have discovered the fraud, I finished. My phone chimed with a text message. Nate, for the 47th time in 3 days. Please call me, Becca. We need to talk. I can explain everything. Another message followed immediately. The real estate agent says there's a problem with the deed. Why didn't you tell me you transferred it? To your name? I set the phone aside without responding. I need to speak to a lawyer. Already ahead of you, Sophie said, pulling out her own phone. Marcus Hernandez, best family lawyer in Portland. He's expecting your call. And I've got someone else you should talk to, Jamie added. Vanessa Wong, financial advisor who specializes in fraud cases. She helped my sister when her ex nearly bankrupted her. I nodded, feeling a strange calm descend. The researcher in me, the part that had built a career methodically investigating immunotherapy breakthroughs, was taking over. I need to see those storage units too. Today. Becca, Sophie began, her tone cautious. You had major surgery less than a week ago. I met my sister's concerned gaze. And my husband has been planning something for at least 8 months. I need to know what's in that storage unit before he realizes I'm on to him. Jamie closed his laptop. I'll drive. Cedar Mill Storage Center was a sprawling complex on the outskirts of Portland. Unit 447 was in the back corner, a large 10x20 space with a roll-up door. The key fob Nate had given me worked, thankfully. As the door rattled upward, the scent of cardboard and furniture polish wafted out. This can't be everything, I said, surveying the space. Our 4-bedroom Victorian had been filled with antiques, books, art. The storage unit held perhaps a quarter of our possessions. Jamie pulled out a flashlight, illuminating the corners. This looks pretty picked over. I moved carefully through the unit, mindful of my healing incision. My mother's paintings were stacked against the wall, at least. My research files appeared intact. But the valuable antiques, my grandmother's silver, the first edition books we'd collected, all missing. A small lockbox caught my eye, tucked behind a stack of photo albums. It wasn't ours. At least, it wasn't anything I recognized. The key was taped to the top. What's that? Sophie asked, coming to stand beside me. I removed the key and opened the box. Inside were passports, Nate's regular one, and another ID. Never seen before, issued to Nathan J. Mitchell with stamps from the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, and Belize. Underneath the passports lay a small black notebook. The notebook contained account numbers, passwords, and what appeared to be transfer instructions. The final page had a single entry. Transfer complete by April 15th. EW confirms property in Belize ready. EW, Jamie mused. Ethan Walters? Nate's business partner, I confirmed. My phone buzzed again. Nate, calling for the 3rd time that day. This time I answered and put it on speaker. Becca, finally, where are you? I've been worried sick. Have you? I asked, my voice neutral. Of course. You just had surgery. You need proper care. Come home. Well, to the hotel for now. I can explain everything about the house. Can you explain the second passport too? Or the offshore accounts? Or the property in Belize? The silence that followed was deafening. I don't know what you're talking about, he finally said, his voice carefully controlled. You're confused, Becca. The medication. Stop blaming. My medication for your lies, I interrupted. I found the storage unit. I found your little lockbox. I know about the mortgage you took out in my name. What I don't know is why. Were you planning to disappear with everything, Nate? Leave me with nothing but a fraudulent mortgage while I was fighting to recover from surgery? Another pause. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been methodically stripping our assets for months, planning to disappear to Belize with Ethan Walters. You don't understand the pressure I've been under, Nate began, his voice taking on that wounded tone he used when cornered. The development deals went bad, really bad. Ethan and I needed capital to stay afloat. It was temporary, just until we could turn things around. So you committed fraud? Stole from me? Borrowed, he corrected. I was going to pay it all back. The house sale was going to fix everything. We'd pay off the loan, have enough to start fresh. With my house, I said. The house that isn't in your name to sell. A technicality, he dismissed. We're married. What's yours is mine. Sophie made a strangled sound of outrage beside me. That's not how property law works, Nate, I said, my researcher's precision taking over. And it's certainly not how marriage is supposed to work. Just come to the hotel, he pleaded. We can work this out. You need me right now, Becca. You're recovering from surgery. You can barely stand on your own. I have everything I need, I replied, looking at Sophie and Jamie. And as for working it out, I think I'll leave that to the lawyers. I ended the call before he could respond. So, what's the plan? Sophie asked quietly. I picked up the black notebook, weighing it in my hand. First, copies of everything. Then we call Marcus Hernandez, and Vanessa Wong, and possibly the FBI, depending on how deep this fraud goes. Jamie nodded, already photographing the passport and notebook pages. And then? I thought of the house, my house, with its sold sign prominently displayed. Then, we take back what's mine. Marcus Hernandez's office overlooked Pioneer Square in downtown Portland. Rain streamed down the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting wavering shadows across the polished conference table where we sat. I was still moving gingerly, but the fire of purpose had pushed the pain to a manageable background hum. This is extensive, Marcus said, reviewing the documents we'd brought. A distinguished man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and tortoiseshell glasses, he had the measured calm of someone who'd seen every form of marital deception imaginable. The fraudulent mortgage alone would be enough to pursue criminal charges. What about the house sale? I asked. He signed contracts, accepted earnest money. Without your signature, any sale is invalid, Marcus confirmed. The property is solely in your name. However, the attempt to sell constitutes attempted fraud. Vanessa Wong, the financial advisor Jamie had recommended, tapped her pen against her notepad. Sharp-eyed and direct, she had spent the last hour tracking the movement of funds through Nate's increasingly complex web of accounts. The bigger issue is the money, she said. From what I can see, he's transferred nearly $3 million through various shell companies. Some of it was yours jointly, but a significant portion, specifically the mortgage funds, are solely in your name. That's straightforward theft. Can we get it back? Sophie asked from her position by the window. Some of it, Vanessa acknowledged. We've already frozen the accounts we can identify, but the transfers to Belize and the Caymans, those will be more challenging. My phone buzzed again. Not Nate this time, but an unfamiliar number. I answered cautiously. Ms. Mitchell, this is Olivia Walters, Ethan's wife. I think we need to talk. I put the phone on speaker. Hello, Olivia. What can I do for you? Not over the phone, she said, her voice tight with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. Can we meet? It's important. It's about your husband and mine, about their plans. I exchanged glances with everyone around the table. Marcus nodded slightly. Cascade Brewing on the waterfront in an hour? I suggested. I'll be there. Thank you. She ended the call abruptly. This could be useful, Marcus observed. The wife might have information we don't. Or it could be a trap, Jamie cautioned. Nate could have put her up to this. Only one way to find out, I said, gathering my things. Despite the pain medication wearing off, a new kind of energy coursed through me. For months, I'd been focused on my health crisis, the diagnosis, the treatment plan, the surgery. I'd trusted Nate to handle our affairs while I fought for my recovery. Now I was fighting a different battle, and this one I intended to win. I'll go with you, Sophie volunteered. I nodded gratefully. Let's see what Olivia Walters has to say. Cascade Brewing sat perched over the Willamette River, rain drumming against its wide windows. Inside, the warm glow of pendant lights created islands of illumination in the otherwise dimly lit space. I spotted Olivia immediately, elegantly, dressed, perfectly coiffed, looking utterly out of place among the casual Portland crowd. Her eyes widened slightly as she took in my appearance. Still pale, moving carefully, with Sophie hovering protectively at my side. You really did just have surgery, she said as we sat down across from her. Ethan said Nathan told him it was minor, that you'd be back on your feet in a day. Removal of an abdominal tumor, I replied. Not exactly outpatient procedure. Olivia's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. I'd met her a handful of times at company events. Always perfectly put together, always slightly aloof. Now, up close, I could see the carefully concealed exhaustion around her eyes, the tension in her jaw. I found something, she said without preamble, her voice barely above a whisper. In Ethan's office, plans for a property in Belize. Construction is already underway. 2 houses on a private beach. 2 houses? Sophie repeated. For them, Olivia clarified. Not for us. There are no provisions for families in these plans. Just bachelor accommodations. The implication hung in the air between us. When did you find this? I asked. 3 days ago, after Ethan came home in a panic about your house sale falling through. He and Nathan had been counting on that. Money, they needed it to finish the Belize project. Olivia's composure cracked slightly. I've been with Ethan for 15 years, supported him through business school, helped him build his client base, and he was planning to just disappear, I finished for her, starting fresh without the burden of wives. Olivia nodded, blinking rapidly. There's more. The development project that failed last year? It didn't exactly fail. They siphoned the investor funds. Millions of dollars. Those investors have been getting suspicious, asking questions. Ethan and Nathan needed new capital to cover the shortfall. My house, I said, and the fraudulent mortgage in my name. And our savings, Olivia added. Everything we had, but it still wasn't enough. That's why they needed your house to sell. Quickly. Sophie leaned forward. Olivia, we've involved lawyers and financial investigators. This is serious criminal activity. I know, Olivia whispered. That's why I'm here. I want to help. I have documents, copies of everything I found. The Belize property, the diverted investor funds, their exit strategy. She reached into her designer handbag and produced a thumb drive. 15 years of marriage, and this is what I have to show for it. Evidence of fraud. I accepted the thumb. Drive. Feeling an unexpected kinship with this woman I barely knew. Both of us betrayed by the men we'd built lives with. They'll know you've taken this, I said. They'll suspect you've talked to me. Ethan is too busy panicking to notice, Olivia replied, a hint of steel entering her voice. He came home last night ranting about offshore account freezes. Something about fraud alerts. Was that your doing? I smiled slightly. I have good friends with particular skills. Keep doing whatever you're doing, Olivia said. They're scrambling, making mistakes. Ethan called your husband this morning in a complete state. Apparently one of their investors has hired an investigator. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Emergency meeting needed. New developments. Can you come to the office? I showed Sophie the message. She nodded and signaled for the check. Olivia, I said carefully, what do you want out of this? What's your endgame? She considered the question, perfectly manicured nails tapping against her water glass. What do I want? I want back every minute I wasted loving a man who was planning to abandon me. Since that's impossible, I'll settle for making sure he doesn't profit from any of this, and I want— She hesitated. I want to start over. Cleanly. I nodded, understanding completely. We can help each other. I'd like that, she said, offering a tentative smile. I was an accountant before I married Ethan, you know. Specialized in forensic accounting, actually. Ironic, isn't it? An idea began forming in my mind. Very ironic, and potentially very useful. Would you be willing to meet with my financial advisor? Today? I'll clear my schedule. Olivia agreed. Back at Marcus's office, the atmosphere had shifted from cautious strategy to focused urgency. Vanessa was already there, laptops open, documents spread across the conference table. A new face greeted us, a stern-looking woman in a crisp suit. Agent Caroline Diaz, Marcus introduced her. FBI White-Collar Crimes Division. Ms. Mitchell, Agent Diaz nodded crisply. We've been investigating Cascade Development for several months, specifically your husband Nathan Mitchell and his partner Ethan Walters. Their names came up in connection with a larger investment fraud scheme. I sank into a chair, grateful for its support as my strength wavered. So you already knew? We knew some of it, Agent Diaz clarified, but what you've brought forward, the fraudulent mortgage, the attempted property sale, the offshore accounts, that accelerates our timeline considerably. And now with Mrs. Walters providing additional evidence, she gestured to Olivia, who had joined us and was already deep in conversation with Vanessa. Marcus slid a document across the table to me. This is an emergency court order freezing. All assets connected to both men. The judge signed it 20 minutes ago. What happens now? Sophie asked, her hand resting protectively on my shoulder. Normally, we'd move to arrest and charge them, Agent Diaz explained. But given the complexity of the financial fraud and the international elements, we'd prefer to build the most comprehensive case possible. Which means using me as bait, I finished, the pieces clicking into place. Agent Diaz's expression remained neutral. We'd like Nathan Mitchell to believe he still has a chance to salvage his plans. That means you would need to reconnect with him. Make him think you're still in the dark about the extent of his activities. That's asking a lot, Marcus cautioned. My client is recovering from major surgery. The psychological stress alone— I'll do it, I interrupted. Everyone turned to look at me. I'll do it, but on my terms. I want full protection for myself and for Olivia, and I want guarantees that we'll recover as much of our money as possible. Agent Diaz nodded. We can work with that. Our primary goal is to recover the investor funds and prevent Mitchell and Walters from fleeing jurisdiction. My phone buzzed again, Nate's number appearing on the screen. I showed it to Agent Diaz, who nodded encouragingly. Hello, Nate, I answered, keeping my voice carefully neutral. Becca, thank God. His voice sounded strained, desperate. We need to talk, face to face, please. I caught Agent Diaz's eye. She nodded again. I'm still recovering, Nate, I said, allowing a hint of fatigue to enter my voice. But yes, we should talk. Tomorrow, maybe. No, tonight, it's important. The urgency in his tone was unmistakable. Dinner. That new place you wanted to try on Alberta Street? 7 o'clock? Fine, I agreed. 7 o'clock. As I ended the call, I became aware of the room's focused energy. Marcus making notes. Agent Diaz conferring with a colleague on her phone. Vanessa and Olivia huddled over financial documents, Sophie watching me with concern. "Are you sure about this?" my sister asked quietly. "You can barely stand for more than 20 minutes at a time." "I've spent months feeling helpless," I replied. "First because of the diagnosis, then the surgery. I'm done with that." Nate chose the perfect time to execute his plan, when I was at my most vulnerable, most dependent. He didn't count on me discovering it so quickly, or fighting back so effectively. "He underestimated you," Sophie said with fierce pride. "They both did," Olivia added, looking up from her work with Vanessa. "Ethan used to joke about how I'd let my accounting skills go to waste when we married. He has no idea that I've been tracking his financial movements for months." Agent Diaz rejoined us. "We'll wire you for the dinner meeting, Ms. Mitchell. Nothing obvious, just audio. We'll have agents nearby but out of sight. The goal is to get him talking about the fraud, the Belize property, the investor funds, anything that confirms his intent." I nodded, a strange calm settling over me. "I can do that." "We also need more information about the fraudulent mortgage," Marcus added. "Any details about how he obtained your signature, who notarized it? And we need to understand exactly how they were planning to move the funds from your house sale," Vanessa interjected. "The specific accounts, the timeline." For the first time since waking up from surgery to discover my home sold, I felt a surge of something like strength. Not physical. My body was still weak, still healing, but a deeper kind of strength. The kind that comes from reclaiming control. "Give me until tomorrow night," I said. "I'll get everything we need." The restaurant on Alberta Street hummed. With the energy of Portland's dinner crowd, bearded men in flannel discussing craft beers, women in sustainable fashion sharing small plates, the occasional tech entrepreneur holding forth about the next big startup. I arrived 15 minutes late, a small act of control that I knew would unnerve Nate, who prided himself on punctuality. My body ached with exhaustion, but I'd taken just enough pain medication to function without clouding my thinking. The wire, taped between my shoulder blades, itched slightly. Agent Diaz and her team were in a van half a block away, monitoring every word. Nate stood as I approached the table, his face a mask of concern. "Becca, you look—" He trailed off, apparently thinking better of commenting on my appearance. "I'm glad you came." I eased into my chair, careful not to disturb the wire. "You said it was important." "It is." He reached across the table for my hand. I let him take it, noting the slight tremor in his fingers. "I know you're upset about the house. I should have discussed it with you first, but I needed to move quickly, and you were focused on your health." "So you forged my texts?" I interrupted, my voice level. "Pretended to be me to the real estate agent?" Nate had the grace to look embarrassed. "That was an error in judgment. I just didn't want you stressing about financial matters while you were preparing for surgery. You know how you get when you're anxious. It could have affected your recovery." I sipped the water the server had placed before me, buying time to control my response. The sheer audacity of his concern trolling made my incision site throb. So it was for my own good. Exactly. Relief washed over his face at my apparent understanding. "Everything I've done has been for us, Becca. For our future." "Including the new mortgage?" I asked casually, as if inquiring about the weather. His water glass paused halfway to his lips. "What mortgage?" "The one you took out on the house. In my name." I held his gaze steadily. "The one with my forged signature." Nate set down his glass carefully. "I don't know what you're talking about." $2.5 million, Nate. That's a lot of money to forget about." His expression shifted through several emotions, confusion, alarm, calculation, before settling on wounded innocence. Becca, I think your medication is making you confused. There's no new mortgage. I pulled out my phone and pulled up the document Jamie had obtained. Pacific Northwest Lending. March 17th. My signature, not a very good forgery, by the way. You didn't even get the loop in my B right. Nate's face drained of color. Where did you get that? Does it matter? What matters is where the money went. I leaned forward, keeping my voice low. Belize, Nate? Really? Couldn't you have been more original? His eyes darted around the restaurant, looking for listeners. Finding none close by, he leaned in. It's not what you think. The business was in trouble. Those development deals in the Pearl District went sideways. Ethan and I were facing bankruptcy. So you committed fraud? Stole from me? Borrowed, he insisted. It was always temporary. The house sale would have covered everything. We'd have walked away clean, debt-free, with enough to start over. We? I repeated. Or just you and Ethan? Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that I'd connected those particular dots. I don't know what you've heard, he began cautiously, but Ethan and I were just securing a safety net, a business opportunity in Belize, investment properties. You would have loved it there, the beaches, the climate, perfect for your recovery. Funny, the architectural plans don't mention wives, just 2 bachelor villas. Nate's facade cracked slightly. You've been talking to Olivia. Among others, I acknowledged. A waiter approached, but Nate waved him away impatiently. The point is, I can fix this, all of it. I just need a little more time, and your cooperation. The house sale is critical. With that money, I can make everything right. Everything? I echoed. The mortgage fraud? The embezzled investor funds? The offshore accounts? Which part exactly can you make right, Nate? His expression hardened. How do you know about any of that? I know everything. I let the statement hang between us. The question is, what do you expect me to do with this knowledge? Nate reached for my hand again, his charm offensive activating like a switch had been flipped. Becca, listen to me. This got away from me. Things spiraled. But we can still salvage our life together. Sign the house papers. Let the sale go through. I'll pay back everything, make it all right. We can start fresh. Like you and Ethan were planning to start fresh, without us? He winced. That was Ethan's idea. I never intended. Save it, I interrupted. I found your second passport, Nate. The one with all those interesting stamps from banking havens. Were you planning to take me with you when you fled the country, or was my surgery just convenient timing? His expression turned calculating. What exactly do you want, Becca? Money? I can get you money. Once this sale goes through. The sale isn't going through, I said quietly. The house isn't yours to sell. It's mine. Only mine. Has been since I paid off the mortgage with my grandmother's inheritance last year. Nate froze. That's not possible. We're married. It's joint property. Not in Oregon. Not when I specifically had the deed transferred to my name only. With your blessing, remember? For tax purposes? His face contorted with sudden anger. You tricked me. I laughed, the sound surprising even me. That's rich, coming from you. I didn't trick you, Nate. I protected myself. Something told me to keep those assets separate. Woman's intuition, maybe. Or perhaps I subconsciously noticed all those late-night calls, the hushed conversations with Ethan, the mysterious business trips. Nate's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening further. Ethan says our accounts are frozen. All of them, even the offshore ones. Did you do that? Not alone, I admitted. I had help. Good help. Do you have any idea what you've done? His voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. He lowered it again with visible effort. Those investors will come after us now. They'll press charges, serious charges. I know. I met his gaze calmly. Fraud, embezzlement, wire fraud across state lines. That's federal, by the way. Not to mention the identity theft and mortgage fraud in my name. They'll come after you too, he threatened. As my wife, you're implicated. No, I'm not. Not. When I'm the one who reported it. I let that sink in. Not when I'm cooperating with the FBI. Nate's eyes widened. You're bluffing. Agent Diaz sends her regards, I replied. She's particularly interested in the investor funds. Something about connections to a larger fraud scheme they've been tracking? His face went ash gray. You're wearing a wire. Does it matter? I have all I need. Your admission about the mortgage fraud, the embezzled investor funds, the planned escape to Belize, that's more than enough. Nate's demeanor shifted suddenly. The charm vanished, replaced by cold fury. You think you're so clever. You and your researcher's brain, always analyzing, always questioning. But you're nothing without me, Rebecca. I built our life while you played with test tubes. Who paid the bills when your research grants fell through? Who networked with investors to fund your precious tumor studies? Me. It was always me. I absorbed the verbal assault calmly. This was the real Nate, the one I'd glimpsed occasionally, through the years when deals went wrong or challenges arose. The one who believed his business acumen made him superior, made him entitled to whatever he wanted. Are you finished? I asked when he paused for breath. You won't survive this, he hissed. You can barely stand. You need me. No, Nate, I corrected gently. I don't. What I need is for you to sign these. I removed a folder from my bag and slid it across the table. Divorce papers and a full confession of the financial crimes. Sign them and I'll ask for leniency. In your sentencing. He stared at the documents as if they might bite. You expect me to confess? To sign my life away? I expect you to make the smart business decision, the one with the best return on investment. I used his language deliberately. Cooperate, confess, return what you can of the investor funds, and maybe, just maybe, you'll serve 5 years instead of 20. And if I don't? Then the FBI agents outside will arrest you right now, and we'll do this the hard way. Your choice, Nate. But I should warn you, Ethan is meeting with Olivia and another FBI agent as we speak. I suspect he'll choose the path of least resistance. He always was the pragmatic one. Nate's phone buzzed again. He checked it, his expression confirming my suspicion. Ethan's flipping on you, isn't he? I asked softly. Nate said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. Pen? I offered, extending a sleek Mont Blanc, his favorite brand, one he'd given me for our 10th anniversary. His hand trembled as he reached for it. I did love you, Becca. In my way. Your way wasn't good enough, I replied simply. As he began signing the documents, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The adrenaline that had carried me through. The confrontation was ebbing, leaving behind the physical reality of my still healing body. But there was also something else, a sense of closure, of justice, of reclaiming control. Nate had tried to use my illness, my vulnerability, against me, had planned to strip me of everything while I fought to recover from surgery. He hadn't counted on me fighting back. None of them had. 6 months later, I stood in the center of my new home, a converted industrial loft in the Pearl District with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. Rain streamed down the glass, but inside, warmth and light filled the open space. To new beginnings, Sophie declared, raising her champagne glass. Around my kitchen island stood the people who had helped me rebuild from the ashes of betrayal. Sophie and Jamie, Vanessa, Marcus, even Agent Diaz, now Caroline in casual settings. And Olivia, who had become an unexpected friend through the shared crucible of our experiences. To justice, Olivia added, clinking her glass against mine. She looked younger somehow, the perpetual tension erased from her features. Like me, she had emerged stronger from the wreckage of her marriage. "I still can't believe the sentencing," Jamie remarked, refilling his glass. 12 years for Nate, 10 for Ethan. That's significant. "The cooperation agreements helped," Caroline noted. Their testimony rolled up 3 other players in the larger investment scheme. The U.S. attorney was very pleased. "Speaking of pleased," Marcus interjected, "the final restitution order came through yesterday. Between the recovered offshore funds and the liquidated assets, investors will receive nearly 80% of their money back." "And we got every penny of ours," Olivia said, a satisfied smile playing at her lips. Her expertise in forensic accounting had proven invaluable in tracing the complex web of financial maneuvers our husbands had constructed. Caroline said they have enough evidence to make the charges stick regardless. Our testimonies are just icing on the cake. The doorbell rang. I glanced at the time, barely 7 a.m. "Someone's at my door," I told Olivia. "I'll call you back." Through the peephole, I spotted a delivery person holding a large arrangement of white lilies. My stomach clenched. White lilies, Nate's signature "I'm sorry" flowers throughout our marriage. Whenever a business dinner ran too late, whenever he missed an important event, white lilies would appear. I opened the door cautiously. "Rebecca?" "Mitchell," the delivery person confirmed. "Yes." "Sign here, please." I accepted the electronic tablet, scrawled my signature, and took the arrangement. No card visible. Setting the flowers on the kitchen island, I searched through the blooms until I found the small envelope tucked between stems. The card inside bore only 2 words in a handwriting I didn't recognize. "Watch out." My pulse quickened. Not an apology. From Nate. A threat. I was still staring at the card when my phone rang again, Caroline this time. "I was about to call you," I said, answering immediately. "I just received flowers with a threatening note." "That's why I'm calling," Caroline replied, her voice tense. "We've been monitoring communications to and from Mitchell and Walters. There's been chatter. With the new arrests this morning, some powerful people are getting nervous." "Nervous? Enough to send threats?" "Nervous enough to try to silence potential witnesses," Caroline clarified. "I'm sending a patrol car to your address. Don't go to work today. Stay home, doors locked, until I contact you." The gravity of her words sank in. "You think I'm in actual danger?" "I think we're dealing with people who have lost or are about to lose everything," she responded. "That makes them unpredictable. Prescott especially has connections that concern us." After ending the call, I moved methodically through the loft, checking window locks, drawing blinds. The open space that had felt so liberating suddenly seemed exposed, vulnerable. Too many windows, too many entry points. My phone rang again. Sophie this time. "Did you get flowers too?" I asked immediately. "No," she sounded confused. "Why?" I explained quickly about the lilies, the note, Caroline's call. "I'm coming over," Sophie decided. "Jamie too." "Caroline's sending police protection." "Great. They can protect all 3 of us while Jamie installs a proper security system. The one you have is embarrassingly basic." I didn't argue. Sophie, in protective mode, was an unstoppable force. While waiting, I brewed coffee, the ordinary ritual helping calm my nerves. The flowers sat accusingly on the counter. I considered throwing them away, then stopped. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. A sharp knock at the door made me jump. I checked the peephole. Sophie and Jamie stood outside, Jamie laden with equipment bags, Sophie holding grocery bags. "You didn't need to bring food," I said as I let them in. "Stress baking," Sophie explained, heading straight for the kitchen. "I made cinnamon rolls when Jamie told me about the arrests. Then Caroline called about potential threats, so I made banana bread too," Jamie was already examining my door locks with professional disapproval. These wouldn't keep out a determined teenager, let alone someone with resources. Hence why you're here, I reminded him, attempting a lightness I didn't feel. He pulled out tools, electronic components, and what looked like tiny cameras. I'm installing a full system. Door sensors, window sensors, motion detectors, cameras with facial recognition, all connected to an app you can monitor from anywhere. Is that level of security really necessary? I asked, the reality of the situation still settling uncomfortably around me. Sophie paused in unpacking her stress-baked goods. Becca, you helped bring down a multi-million-dollar fraud operation. Now more arrests are happening. Powerful men are facing prison because of evidence you and Olivia provided. So yes, it's necessary. Put that way, I couldn't argue. While Jamie worked and Sophie stress-organized my kitchen, I checked my email. The Research Institute director had already written, advising all staff to work from home due to security concerns. Evidently, the FBI had been making calls. By noon, 2 police officers were stationed outside my building. Jamie had installed enough security technology to protect a small government facility, and Sophie had organized my kitchen into a state of ruthless efficiency. Preliminary hearing for the new defendants is tomorrow, Caroline reported when she called to check in. We expect bail to be denied given the flight risk. Until then, consider yourself under protective watch. What about Olivia? I asked. Already covered. She's staying with her sister in Lake Oswego. The property has a gate and security system. After Caroline hung up, I turned to find Sophie and Jamie watching me with concerned expressions. I'm fine, I assured them, though the constant flutter of anxiety in my chest suggested otherwise. Just processing. You don't have to be fine, Sophie pointed out. This is objectively terrifying. I sank onto a bar stool. When I decided to fight back against Nate, I never imagined it would expand to this. I just wanted justice for what he did to me. That's how these things work sometimes, Jamie said, testing a door sensor. You pull on one thread, and an entire tapestry unravels. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Just heard. Marcus and I are working on restraining orders against all potential threats. Stay safe. The rest of the day passed in a blur of security installations, check-in calls, and news updates. By evening, the story had expanded further. The fraud scheme now appeared to involve development projects across 3 states, with potentially hundreds of victims. You should stay with us tonight, Sophie insisted as darkness fell. Your bedroom's always ready. I was tempted, but something in me resisted. I can't keep running to your guest room whenever things get difficult. It's not running, it's being smart, Jamie countered, but I held firm. The police are outside. Your security system would make the CIA jealous. I'll be fine here. Seeing their unconvinced expressions, I added, I need to show myself I can handle this, that I won't be chased from my own home by threats. After extracting promises to keep my phone on and answer regardless of the hour, they reluctantly left. The loft felt cavernous in their absence, every shadow suddenly suspect. I double-checked every lock, tested every security feature Jamie had installed, and finally settled on the couch with my laptop, too wired to sleep. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Rebecca. The voice sent ice through my veins. Not Nate. Worse. William Prescott, one of the developers arrested that morning. A man I'd met several times at industry events, always dismissing me as Mitchell's academic wife. How did you get this number? I managed to ask, my finger hovering over the emergency button on Jamie's security app. That's not important, Prescott replied, his usual boardroom confidence intact, despite his presumably recent release on bail. What's important is that you understand the gravity of your situation. I understand perfectly, I said, pressing the emergency alert. You're facing federal charges for fraud. Serious charges. Charges based largely on your testimony, he countered smoothly. Testimony that could be reconsidered. Are you threatening me, Mr. Prescott? I'm offering you an opportunity, he corrected. The flowers were perhaps too subtle. Let me be direct. $20 million, cash equivalent, untraceable, in exchange for revised testimony that casts doubt on Mitchell's claims about our involvement. The sheer audacity momentarily robbed me of speech. You're attempting to bribe a federal witness. That's another felony to add to your growing list. It's a business proposition, Prescott insisted. One with significant upside for you and devastating consequences if declined. My security app flashed confirmation that police had been alerted to my emergency signal. The only person facing devastating consequences is you, I replied, finding my voice. This call is being recorded and has been reported to the FBI. I suggest you contact your attorney immediately. A long pause followed. You're making a serious mistake, Dr. Mitchell. No, you made the serious mistake when you called me. Goodbye, Mr. Prescott. I ended the call just as banging erupted at my door, the police responding to the emergency alert. For the second time that day, I found myself explaining threats and providing evidence to law enforcement. We'll take him in for witness tampering, the officer assured me after listening to the recorded call. Agent Diaz has been notified. By the time Caroline arrived, it was nearly 2 a.m. She looked as exhausted as I felt, but grimly satisfied when I played Prescott's call for her. He just handed us the final nail for his coffin, she observed. Bail will definitely be revoked now. Why would he take such a risk? I asked, genuinely bewildered. He had to know I'd report it. Desperation, Caroline replied simply. Men, like Prescott, aren't accustomed to consequences. They believe their money can solve any problem. She studied me carefully. Are you okay? This is a lot for anyone to handle. The honest answer was no. I wasn't okay. The foundation I'd been rebuilding had been shaken again. The safety I'd carefully constructed revealed as fragile. I will be, I said instead. What happens now? Now you get some rest with officers outside your door all night, Caroline said firmly. Tomorrow, we move you to a secure location until the preliminary hearings are complete. For how long? A week, maybe 2. I nodded, too drained to argue. What about the Phoenix Foundation launch next month? We can't postpone again. We'll work around it, Caroline promised. One crisis at a time. After she left, I couldn't face the bedroom. Instead, I curled up on the couch, laptop open to the Phoenix Foundation business plan, the work that had become my purpose in the aftermath of betrayal, creating something meaningful from the wreckage of Nate's schemes. The foundation would provide financial literacy education, legal assistance, and emergency housing for women escaping financially abusive relationships. Women like me, like Olivia. But women without our resources, our support networks, our privileges. I must have dozed off eventually, because the next thing I knew, morning light was streaming through the windows and my phone was ringing. Vanessa. They've revoked bail for all of them, she reported without preamble. Prescott's lawyer withdrew from the case after the witness tampering charge. It's all over the news. I switched on the television to see the same federal building, different day. This time with Prescott being escorted inside in handcuffs, his usual confident smirk replaced with unconcealed fury. The judge cited flight risk and witness tampering in the decision to revoke bail for all 3 defendants, the reporter explained. Sources close to the case indicate that defendant William Prescott made an explicit attempt to bribe a key witness last night. Seeing my life reduced to a news soundbite was surreal. This isn't going away anytime soon, is it? I asked Vanessa. No, she confirmed. But neither are you. Pack a bag. Caroline told me about the safe house. I'm coming with you. You don't have to do that. I know. That's what makes me such an exceptional friend. I laughed despite everything. Can't argue with that logic. 2 hours later, I found myself in a modernist cabin on the outskirts of Portland, perched on a hillside with views of Mount Hood in the distance. FBI safe house conjured images of Spartan apartments with bare necessities, not architectural retreats, with gourmet kitchens. Property seized in another case, Caroline explained when she dropped us off. Might as well put it to good use. You'll have agents nearby around the clock, but they'll stay out of sight unless needed. Vanessa wasted no time claiming a bedroom and setting up her laptop. I can work remotely for as long as necessary, she declared. The firm understands the situation. Left alone in the spacious living room, I felt the familiar wave of displacement. Another home that wasn't really mine. Another disruption just as I'd been finding my footing. But unlike the hotel Nate had booked when he sold our house, this displacement served a purpose. It was protection, not erasure. Caroline sent me the rest of your security details schedule, Vanessa called from her room. Sophie and Jamie are cleared to visit tomorrow. Olivia on Thursday. Marcus wants to come Friday to review your testimony for the grand jury. Grand jury? This was news to me. Vanessa appeared in the doorway. Didn't Caroline tell you? With the expanded case, they're convening a special grand jury. You and Olivia will be the first witnesses. My head swam with the implications. A grand jury meant the case was growing beyond individual charges against Nate, Ethan, and the recently arrested developers. It suggested a systematic investigation into the entire Portland real estate development industry. I need to sit down, I murmured, finding the nearest chair. Vanessa's expression softened. It's a lot, I know. But remember what Marcus always says. The legal system moves at its own pace. All you have to do is tell your truth, the same way you've been doing. My truth nearly got me threatened by William Prescott, I pointed out, which only proves how powerful that truth is, Vanessa countered. Desperate people make desperate moves. That evening, as we prepared dinner from the well-stocked refrigerator, my phone rang with an unknown number. After the previous night's call, I hesitated. Put it on speaker, Vanessa suggested, knife poised over half-chopped vegetables. I answered cautiously. Hello? Dr. Mitchell? This is Andrea Winters, U.S. Attorney's Office. I exhaled in relief. Yes, speaking. I apologize for calling from an unlisted number. Security protocol. I wanted to personally update you on developments in your case. I appreciate that. The witness tampering charge against Prescott has accelerated our timeline. We'll be presenting evidence to the grand jury next week instead of next month. Your testimony will be crucial. I glanced at Vanessa, who nodded encouragingly. I'll be ready. There's something else you should know, Andrea continued. We've been monitoring communications to and from the Metropolitan Detention Center. Your ex-husband has requested a meeting with you. My knife clattered against the cutting board. Nate wants to see me? Why? He claims to have additional information relevant to the expanded case. Information he'll only share with you present. That sounds like manipulation, I said flatly. Almost certainly, Andrea agreed. However, given the scope of this investigation, we can't afford to ignore potential evidence. I wanted to ask if you would consider attending a supervised meeting. Vanessa was shaking her head vehemently. I need to think about it, I hedged. Of course, it would be under the strictest security protocols. Agent Diaz would be present, along with myself and Mr. Mitchell's attorney. After ending the call, I turned to Vanessa, whose expression conveyed exactly what she thought of the idea. Before you say it, it's a terrible idea, she interrupted. He's trying to manipulate you again. Probably, I acknowledged. But what if he does have information that could help the case? Then he can tell his attorney, who can tell the prosecutor. He doesn't need you there. She was right, of course. There was no logical reason why my presence would be necessary for Nate to share information with authorities. which meant his request had another purpose. Emotional manipulation, perhaps, or an attempt to gauge how much I knew about the expanded case. "I'll sleep on it," I promised. That night, in the unfamiliar bedroom of the safe house, sleep proved elusive. Every creak and settling sound in the cabin startled me awake. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and moved to the living room with my laptop. The Phoenix Foundation website was taking shape. Clean, professional, yet warm. The Our Story page remained blank, awaiting my input. How much of my personal experience should I share? How much of Nate's betrayal should become public narrative in service of helping others? I began typing tentatively. The Phoenix Foundation was born from personal experience with financial abuse and fraud. When my husband of 12 years sold our home while I was undergoing surgery, I discovered a pattern of deception that had been building for months. The words flowed more easily than expected, the clinical distance of writing in third person, allowing me to translate raw experience into something useful, educational. By dawn, I had drafted the entire foundation story, highlighting the warning signs I'd missed, the resources that had helped me fight back, the support systems that made recovery possible. Vanessa found me still typing as sunlight crept into the room. "Have you been up all night?" I stretched, suddenly aware of the stiffness in my neck and shoulders. "Couldn't sleep. Figured I might as well be productive." She peered at my screen. "The foundation story. It's good, Becca, really good." "Think it's too personal?" "No," Vanessa said firmly. "It's exactly personal enough. Women need to know they're not alone, that what happened to them has happened to others, that there's a way forward." I saved the document and closed my laptop. "I've made a decision about Nate's request." "Let me guess. You're going." "I have. Questions only he can answer," I explained. "Not about the case, about us. About when he changed, or if he was always planning something like this." Vanessa sighed. "I understand the impulse. I just don't want you subjected to more manipulation." "Neither do I admitted. But I need closure that doesn't come from news reports or court transcripts. I need to look him in the eye just once, knowing everything I know now." The meeting was arranged for the following week at the Federal Building downtown, under conditions that made a presidential visit look relaxed by comparison. I was escorted through separate entrances, pat-searched, and brought to a conference room that had been swept for recording devices. Caroline met me in the hallway outside. "You don't have to do this," she reminded me. "You can change your mind right up until you walk through that door." "I know." I smoothed down the blazer I'd chosen carefully that morning, professional, confident, armored. "I'm ready." The conference room held a long table with chairs arranged on opposite sides. Andrea Winters sat at one end, files neatly arranged before her. A court reporter occupied a small desk in the corner. Across the table, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, Nate's attorney, reviewed documents with a furrowed brow. And then there was Nate. Prison hadn't been kind to him. The designer clothes had been replaced with a standard jumpsuit, the carefully maintained physique had softened, the meticulous haircut grown out unevenly. Yet his posture remained impeccable, his expression carefully composed. Our eyes met as I entered. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, at seeing me so visibly recovered. The last time he'd seen me, I'd been pale and weakened from surgery, still dependent on pain medication. "Ms. Mitchell," Andrea greeted me formally. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. For the record, you are here voluntarily and may terminate this conversation at any time." I nodded, taking the seat Caroline pulled out for me, directly across from Nate, but safely distant. "Mr. Mitchell has indicated he has information relevant to our ongoing investigation," Andrea continued. "Information he prefers to share with you present. Before we proceed, I want to confirm that you understand this meeting is being transcribed and may become part of the official record." "I understand," I confirmed, setting my purse on the floor beside me. "Very well." Andrea turned to Nate. "Mr. Mitchell, you may proceed." Nate cleared his throat, glancing at his attorney, who nodded slightly. "Thank you for coming, Becca," he began, his voice holding the same persuasive tone he'd used in countless business negotiations. "I know you didn't have to." I said nothing, waiting. "I've had a lot of time to think in here," he continued when it became clear I wouldn't respond. "About the choices I made, the people I hurt." He leaned forward slightly. "I want to make things right. By providing information about the larger fraud scheme," Andrea prompted when he paused. "Yes," Nate agreed, though his eyes remained fixed on me. "But first, I need to explain something to Becca. Something important." I raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," he said, voice dropping to near whisper. "The initial plan with Ethan was just a simple property flip. Buy low, renovate, sell high. Nothing illegal." "And yet you committed mortgage fraud in my name," I noted coolly, "while I was having surgery." Nate winced. "That came later. After the first development deal went sideways. We were desperate. Prescott suggested forging my signature, stealing my inheritance. Suggested alternative financing options," Nate amended carefully, glancing at his attorney. "I made the choice to involve you without your knowledge. That's on to me." "How generous of you to take responsibility," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Caroline placed a warning hand on my arm, a reminder to stay calm, that this was being transcribed. "What information do you have about the expanded case, Mr. Mitchell?" Andrea interjected, redirecting the conversation. Nate straightened. "Prescott, Denton and Reynolds weren't just participants in the scheme, they were the architects. They've been running similar operations for years, pulling in desperate developers like me and Ethan when needed." "We're aware of their central roles," Andrea noted. "That's hardly new information." "What you might not be aware of is where the money went," Nate countered. "It wasn't just offshore accounts and Belize properties. A significant portion was funneled into campaign contributions for city officials who controlled zoning decisions." This was indeed new information. I could feel the shift in energy as Andrea leaned forward. "You have evidence of this?" she asked sharply. Nate nodded. "Account records, meeting notes, emails, all backed up on a server Ethan maintained as insurance. I can provide access details." As they delved into the specifics of political corruption, my attention drifted. I studied my former husband's face, searching for traces of the man I'd believed I was marrying. Had there always been this capacity for deception in him? Had I willfully ignored warning signs? "Becca," Nate's voice broke through my thoughts. "There's something else you should know." I refocused, suddenly wary. "Prescott's threats against you weren't isolated," he said quietly. "He made similar threats to other witnesses, other wives. But yours was personal." "Personal how?" Caroline asked sharply. "Prescott blamed Becca specifically for the case expanding. Called her the first domino. Nate hesitated, glancing at his attorney again. "He made statements in prison about making an example of her." Cold dread pooled in my stomach. "That's why you requested this meeting, not to provide case information, to warn me." "Both," Nate insisted. "But yes, I needed to warn you. Prescott has connections, serious connections. Even from inside, he can reach people. We've taken extensive security precautions," Caroline assured me. "Ms. Mitchell is well protected." "Good," Nate said, his relief appearing genuine. "That's good." Andrea closed her notepad. "If you'll provide those server access details now, Mr. Mitchell, we can proceed with verifying this information." While Nate conferred with his attorney and provided technical details to a newly arrived FBI technical specialist, I found myself staring out the window at the Portland skyline. The city that had been my home for 15 years now held both threat and promise, the danger represented by Prescott and his allies, the potential of the Phoenix Foundation's work. "Becca," Nate called softly as the meeting drew to a close. "Can I have 1 minute? Just one." Caroline looked at me questioningly. I nodded slightly. When the others had moved to the far end of the conference room, discussing technical aspects of the server access, Nate leaned forward as far as his restraints would allow. "I know sorry doesn't begin to cover it," he said, his voice stripped of its usual polish. "What I did to you was unforgivable. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that not everything was a lie. I did love you in the beginning." "In the beginning?" I repeated. "When did that change?" He considered the question carefully. "I don't know exactly. Maybe when the pressure started building. Maybe when I realized I couldn't maintain the lifestyle I thought we deserved. Maybe when your career started taking off while mine stagnated." "So you decided to steal from me?" "From us. I decided I was entitled to more than I had earned," he corrected quietly. "The details came later, but that was the fundamental error. The original sin, if you will." I studied him, searching for manipulation, finding instead something that looked remarkably like genuine remorse. "Thank you for the warning about Prescott," I said finally. "Whatever your motives, that information may help keep me safe." Nate nodded, accepting the minimal acknowledgement as more than he deserved. "The Phoenix Foundation," he said unexpectedly. "Jamie mentioned it during his last visit." I blinked in surprise. "Jamie visited you?" "To make very explicit threats about what would happen if I ever contacted you directly," Nate explained with a hint of his old wry humor. "But he mentioned your foundation work. It sounds important." "It is," I confirmed. "Good. You always did know how to build something meaningful from chaos." He straightened as the guards approached to escort him out. "Be careful, Becca. Watch. You're back until Prescott and his friends are firmly behind bars." As Nate was led away, Caroline rejoined me. "You okay?" Surprisingly, yes, I realized. That was clarifying somehow. "He seemed genuinely concerned for your safety," she observed. "Guilt manifests in strange ways," I replied, gathering my belongings. "Has the technical team verified his information about the server?" "Already. Accessing it. Preliminary reports suggest he was telling the truth about the political connections. This could expand the case considerably." Outside the federal building, the spring rain had finally cleared, leaving behind that particular Portland. Freshness, damp earth, blooming flowers, possibility. For the first time since discovering Nate's betrayal, I felt something like closure settling into place. Not forgiveness, never that, but a completion of sorts. A chapter ending, making space for the next to begin. "Take me back to the safe house," I told Caroline as we reached her car. "I have foundation work to finish." The grand jury indictments came down like summer thunder, sudden, powerful, reshaping the landscape. 17 people charged, including 3 city officials, in what the press had dubbed the Portland development scandal. I watched the news conference from the safety of the FBI's hillside cabin, Vanessa and Olivia flanking me on the sofa, Sophie and Jamie standing behind. Today marks a significant step toward accountability in one of Oregon's largest fraud cases, U.S. Attorney Andrea Winters announced, her voice steady as cameras flashed. "Thanks to the courage of key witnesses and the diligence of our investigative team, we have uncovered a pattern of corruption that extended from private development companies into city government." "That's you," Sophie whispered, squeezing my shoulder. "The courageous witness." I said nothing, still processing the scale of what had begun with my discovery of a sold sign on my lawn. The case had expanded beyond anything I could have imagined. Beyond fraud and embezzlement to racketeering, money laundering, bribery of public officials. The Portland development world had been revealed as a house of cards, each corrupt deal supporting another until the entire structure trembled, ready to fall. With these indictments and the additional cooperation of key defendants, we expect to recover significant assets for the defrauded investors and affected communities, Andrea continued on screen. Translation: Nate and Ethan sang like canaries, Jamie observed dryly. Good, Olivia said firmly. They should. The screen split to show footage of the new defendants being processed, former colleagues of Nate's, city officials I recognized from planning commission meetings, even a bank executive who had attended our holiday parties. All of them now reduced to mugshots and case numbers. Does it feel like victory? Vanessa asked quietly. I considered the question. Not victory, I decided. Resolution, maybe, or the beginning of one. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Perfect timing. The foundation registration just came through. The Phoenix rises officially. I showed the message to the others, a wave of something like joy washing over me. After delays caused by security concerns and my protected witness status, the Phoenix Foundation was finally legally established. The work I'd been planning for months could truly begin. We should celebrate, Sophie declared, both the indictments and the foundation. I'm still in protective custody, I reminded her. So we celebrate here, she countered. I'll cook. Jamie can handle security. Vanessa and Olivia can help with foundation planning. We make this moment count. Caroline called an hour later to confirm what we'd already surmised. With the new arrests and Prescott firmly in custody without bail, the immediate threat had diminished. You can return to your loft tomorrow, she said. We'll maintain surveillance. For another week as a precaution, but the most dangerous players are contained. What about the trial? I asked. That's months away. By then, the evidence will be so overwhelming that witness intimidation won't help them, Caroline explained. Their best hope is cooperation agreements, which several attorneys are already exploring. After the call, a weight I'd been carrying lifted slightly. The prospect of returning home, of reclaiming my space and my routines, felt like another step toward normalcy, or whatever new version of normalcy might emerge from these events. Sophie commandeered the cabin's gourmet kitchen, creating an impromptu feast from the well-stocked refrigerator and pantry. The aroma of roasting herbs and caramelizing onions filled the space, complemented by the wine Jamie had brought up from Portland, an exclusive vintage from a small Willamette Valley vineyard. To justice, Olivia proposed as we raised our glasses around the dining table. To fresh starts, Vanessa added. To the Phoenix, Jamie suggested, gesturing toward my laptop where the Foundation's newly completed website glowed on the screen. To all of it, I agreed, the wine warming me from within, and to all of you who made it possible. Later, as Sophie and Jamie cleared dishes and Vanessa made calls to confirm details for the Foundation's launch event, Olivia joined me on the cabin's expansive deck. The evening air carried the scent of pine and distant rain, the lights of Portland twinkling in the valley below. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if they'd succeeded? She asked, wrapping a borrowed sweater tighter around her shoulders. If they'd gotten away with it? I'd asked myself the same question many nights. I think about who I would have been, I admitted, waking up from surgery to discover everything gone, with no way to prove what happened. No deed in my name. No evidence trail. Just a husband insisting I was confused from medication, that we'd discussed it all, that my memory was faulty. Olivia nodded slowly. Gaslighting is the term, I believe. Exactly. I would have questioned myself, my memories, my perceptions, and with the physical vulnerability after surgery. I shuddered slightly. I would have been dependent on the very person who betrayed me. That's what makes what we're doing now so important, Olivia said, turning to face me fully. The Foundation will help women recognize these patterns before they lose everything, before they're at their most vulnerable. If we reach them in time, I noted, the scope of the challenge momentarily overwhelming. "We'll reach some," Olivia said firmly. "More than would have been reached otherwise. That's not nothing." From inside, Vanessa called for our attention. We returned to find her laptop open to a video call with Marcus, whose expression indicated good news. "The first asset recovery is complete," he announced without preamble. $15 million from Prescott's Cayman accounts, transferred directly to the restitution fund this morning. "That was fast," I remarked, surprised by the efficiency of a legal system I'd feared would move at glacial pace. "Prescott's attorney is pushing hard for a cooperation agreement," Marcus explained. "This transfer is gesture of good faith, essentially." "Will he get a deal?" Jamie asked, frowning at the prospect. "Not one he'll like," Marcus assured us. "But any agreement would include full disgorgement of assets and extensive cooperation against the remaining defendants." "What about our personal recoveries?" Olivia inquired, the practical accountant emerging. "The funds stolen directly from Becca and me?" "Those are prioritized in the restitution plan," Marcus confirmed. "Unlike the investors, who may receive partial recoveries, you'll receive full restitution including compensatory damages. The paperwork should come through next week." After the call ended, I sat quietly, absorbing the implications. Financial restitution couldn't erase the betrayal or the trauma that followed, but it represented tangible justice. Money returning to where it belonged, order restored from chaos. "What will you do with the restitution funds?" Vanessa asked as we sipped the last of the wine. "Some to the foundation," I replied, the decision already made. "The rest?" I hesitated, an idea taking shape. "I think I might buy that Victorian in Selwood we looked at last month." Sophie nearly choked on her wine. "The one with the ridiculous garden and the third-floor library? The money pit?" "It has good bones," I defended, smiling at her reaction. "And yes, it needs work. But I think that's what I need now. A project. Something I can restore. Make beautiful again." "Symbolic much?" Vanessa teased gently. "Completely," I acknowledged. "But sometimes the obvious symbolism is the most satisfying." The next morning, I packed my belongings, preparing to leave the safe house that had sheltered me through the most intense phase of the investigation. Caroline arrived to escort me back to Portland, her usual professional demeanor softened by what looked like genuine pleasure at the case's progress. "The U.S. attorney wanted me to convey her personal thanks," she said as we loaded my bags into her SUV. "Your testimony broke this case open in ways we never anticipated." "I was just trying to get justice for myself," I admitted. "I had no idea it would expand to this scale." "That's how these cases often work," Caroline observed. "One person brave enough to speak up reveals the first crack in the facade. Others find courage in that example. The truth has a way of demanding to be heard." As we descended from the hillside toward the city, I watched the landscape transform from wilderness to suburb to urban density. Portland looked different somehow. Not physically changed, but altered in my perception. The skyline that had once represented home now carried complicated associations, both the betrayal I'd experienced and the justice that followed. "Your security detail will remain in place through the foundation launch," Caroline explained as we approached my loft building. "Unmarked cars, plainclothes officers, nothing obvious, but they'll be there." "Is that really still necessary?" I asked, eager to reclaim independence along with my space. "Probably not," she acknowledged. "But after everything that's happened, we're being cautious. Consider it the Bureau's contribution to the Phoenix Foundation, ensuring its founder stays safe to do the work." Inside my loft, everything appeared exactly as I'd left it weeks earlier. Yet it felt subtly different. The open space that had once felt exposed now represented transparency. The industrial beams and visible ductwork that had initially seemed cold now embodied structural honesty. Nothing hidden, nothing disguised. The week that followed passed in a flurry of foundation preparations. The launch event was scheduled for the following Friday at the Portland Art Museum, a location chosen both for its prominence and its security features. Invitations had gone out to media, potential donors, and community organizations working with vulnerable women. The RSVPs are overwhelming, Vanessa reported during our planning meeting. We've had to expand to the larger gallery space. And the security plan is solid, Jamie added. I've coordinated with the museum team and Caroline's people. Every entrance covered, guest list strictly enforced. What about presentations? Sophie asked, reviewing the agenda. Who's speaking? Andrea Winters will give brief remarks about the case, I said, checking my notes. Olivia will present the financial literacy program. I'll handle the opening and the mission overview. Marcus will explain the legal support services. You should share your personal story, Vanessa suggested carefully. Not all the details, but enough to show why this work matters. I hesitated. While I'd included elements of my experience on the foundation website, speaking publicly about Nate's betrayal felt different, more exposing, more vulnerable. You don't have to decide now, Sophie said, noting my hesitation. But Vanessa's right. Your story gives the foundation authenticity. It shows you're not just another rich person with a vanity project. You've lived this. You understand. The day before the launch, I visited the Victorian house in Selwood, the one I'd half-jokingly mentioned buying. The real estate agent, carefully vetted by Jamie and briefed about my situation, met me with keys and disclosure documents. It needs work, she warned as we approached the wraparound porch. The inspection report was extensive. I've read it, I assured her. I'm prepared for a project. Inside, sunlight filtered through dusty stained glass, casting kaleidoscope patterns across worn hardwood floors. The kitchen was hopelessly outdated, the bathrooms barely functional. But the bones, the carefully crafted woodwork, the solid plaster walls, the sweeping staircase, were impeccable. The previous owners lived here for 50 years, the agent explained. Raised 4 children. It needs modernizing, but it's been loved. I wandered through the rooms, envisioning possibilities. The third-floor space that could become a home office with views of the Willamette River. The garden overgrown but filled with heritage roses and mature fruit trees. The reading nook beneath the stairs where children had clearly measured their height in pencil marks over decades. I'll take it, I decided, standing in the center of what would become my bedroom. Full asking price, no contingencies. The agent blinked in surprise. Don't you want to negotiate? The repairs are part of what I'm buying, I finished. I want a house with history, with challenges to overcome. Something that needs restoration, but has a solid foundation. I'll prepare the offer immediately, she promised. That evening, I met Olivia for dinner at a quiet restaurant in the Pearl District, our final review before the foundation launch. She arrived carrying architectural renderings, spreading them across the table as soon as we were seated. The contractor finished the plans for the resource center, she explained, pointing to detailed floor plans. First floor, intake offices, childcare space, community kitchen. Second floor, financial counseling, legal consultation rooms, training facilities. It's perfect. I studied the renderings of what would become the Phoenix Foundation's physical home, a converted warehouse in North Portland, purchased with seed funding from our personal restitution and grants secured through Marcus's connections. When can construction start? I asked, already visualizing women finding safety and support within those walls. 2 weeks, Olivia reported happily. Permits came through yesterday. We should be operational by fall. Our meals arrived, momentarily pausing the foundation discussion. As we ate, I noticed Olivia seemed lighter somehow. The perpetual tension she'd carried throughout her marriage to Ethan replaced with purposeful energy. You seem different, I observed. She considered this, twirling pasta thoughtfully. I am different. For 15 years, I sublimated myself to Ethan's needs, his ambitions. I became the perfectly groomed corporate wife he wanted, set aside my own career, my own interests. She shrugged. Now I'm remembering who I was before him. Then the moment arrived. My turn. As I approached the podium, I felt the weight of all that had happened since that rainy day when I'd discovered the sold sign on my lawn. The betrayal, the discovery, the fight for justice, the rebuilding. The Phoenix Foundation was born from personal experience, I began, my voice steadier than expected. Last year, while I was undergoing surgery to remove a tumor, my husband of 12 years sold our home without my knowledge or consent. When I confronted him, I discovered a pattern of financial deception that had been building for months. Forged signatures, fraudulent mortgages, hidden accounts. I paused, letting the reality of those words settle across the room. I was fortunate, I continued. I had resources many women don't. A supportive sister, friends with specialized skills, access to excellent legal counsel. I had evidence, documentation, and ultimately, a deed in my name alone that prevented the fraudulent sale from being completed. Looking out at the attentive faces, I saw something beyond sympathy. Recognition. Women who had experienced similar betrayals, who understood the unique devastation of financial abuse. The case expanded beyond my personal situation, I explained, revealing a pattern of fraud that reached into city government. But what began as one woman fighting for justice has become something larger, a commitment to ensuring other women have the resources to recognize financial abuse, escape its grasp, and rebuild their lives afterward. As I outlined the Foundation's comprehensive approach, housing assistance, legal aid, financial education, emotional support, I watched understanding dawn across faces in the audience. This wasn't charity, it was systematic change. It wasn't pity, it was empowerment. The name Phoenix Foundation wasn't chosen lightly, I concluded. The phoenix rises from ashes, transformed. It doesn't deny the fire that nearly destroyed it. It incorporates that experience into its new being. That's what we offer, not just escape, not just survival, but transformation. The opportunity to build something new, something stronger, from the ashes of betrayal. The applause that followed felt like absolution, not for Nate or the others who had perpetrated fraud, but for me. For the shame I had initially felt at being deceived, for the vulnerability I had feared showing, for the lingering doubt that I could create meaning from such painful experience. The formal program concluded, transitioning to a reception where potential donors and partner organizations could learn more about specific programs. I found myself surrounded by well-wishers, supporters, and, most importantly, women sharing their own stories of financial manipulation and control. My ex-husband put everything in his brother's name, one woman confided. When I left, there was nothing on paper that was ours, nothing I could claim. My partner convinced me to put his name on my inheritance property, another shared. 3 months later, he sold it and disappeared. With each story, the Foundation's mission crystallized further. This wasn't about one case or one woman's experience. It was about a pattern affecting countless lives, a form of abuse rarely discussed, but devastatingly common. As the event wound down, Caroline approached with a man I didn't recognize, silver-haired, distinguished with the subtle presence of someone accustomed to authority. Dr. Mitchell, this is Chief Judge Edward Montgomery of the U.S. District Court, she introduced. He wanted to meet you personally. I extended my hand, surprised by the jurist's presence. An honor, Your Honor. The honor is mine, he replied, his handshake firm. I've been following your case with interest. In 30 years on the bench, I've seen countless financial crimes, but rarely with such comprehensive evidence and courageous testimony. Thank you, I said. unsure how to respond to such direct praise from a federal judge. Your foundation addresses a critical gap in our system, he continued. The law can punish perpetrators, but it does little to prevent financial abuse or support recovery. I'd like to discuss ways the court might partner with your organization, perhaps creating a specialized docket for financial abuse cases, or developing resources for court staff to recognize the patterns. We would welcome that collaboration, I replied, genuinely moved by his interest. As Judge Montgomery moved on to speak with Marcus about technical details, Sophie appeared at my side, eyes wide. A federal judge wants to partner with us, on day one. Apparently so, I said, still processing the significance. Becca, she began, then stopped, emotions visibly overwhelming her. My practical, straight-talking sister rarely showed such vulnerability. I'm just so proud of you. When I picked you up from that house in the rain, when you were in pain and shocked and betrayed, I never imagined this outcome. Neither did I admitted. I was just trying to survive it. You did more than survive, she insisted. You transformed it. You're helping others transform their experiences, too. The museum staff had begun the subtle process of closing down the event, adjusting lighting, removing empty glasses, guiding lingering guests toward the exits. I gathered my notes from the podium, taking one last look at the space that had hosted the Foundation's first public moment. My phone buzzed with a text from the real estate agent. Offer accepted. The Victorian is yours as soon as we can close. Congratulations. I showed the message to Sophie, who groaned dramatically. You're really doing this. That house needs everything. Not everything, I corrected. Just updates, repairs, modernization. The structure is sound. Metaphor alert, she teased, but squeezed my hand supportively. Outside, the summer evening had settled into that perfect Portland dusk. Long shadows, golden light, mild air scented with roses from the nearby park blocks. Jamie pulled up in his car, security protocols still in place despite the successful conclusion of the event. Where to? He asked as I settled into the passenger seat. I considered the question. My loft awaited, comfortable and familiar. But suddenly I wanted to see my future, not my present. Selwood, I decided. I want to drive by the Victorian, my Victorian. As Jamie navigated toward the East Side neighborhood, I rolled down the window, letting the evening air brush against my face. The foundation was launched, the house purchase secured, the legal case progressing toward justice. Pieces falling into place, not by chance, but by choice, by intention. The Victorian loomed stately at the end of a tree-lined street, its slightly shabby grandeur outlined against the darkening sky. Jamie slowed the car, allowing me to absorb the sight of my future home. The wraparound porch where I'd drink morning. Coffee, the garden I'd gradually restore, the rooms that would become mine alone. It's perfect, I murmured, more to myself than to Jamie. It's a lot of work, he observed pragmatically. Yes, I agreed, smiling at the prospect. Exactly what I need. As we pulled away, I didn't look back. The Victorian would be there tomorrow, and the day after, and the years to come. My future waited, not predicated on anyone else's choices or betrayals, but built by my own hands from whatever materials life had provided. Even the broken pieces, even the ashes. Especially those. Autumn transformed Portland in a symphony of amber and crimson, leaves cascading onto the newly restored porch of my Victorian. 3 months had passed since the Phoenix Foundation launch, a whirlwind period of growth, both professional and personal. The house renovation had consumed much of my focus, stripping decades of outdated wallpaper, restoring original woodwork, updating systems while preserving character. I still think you're insane, Sophie declared, helping me unpack kitchen. Equipment in the newly renovated space, quartz countertops and modern appliances blending surprisingly well with the restored butler's pantry and original glass front cabinets. You could have bought a perfectly functional modern home with no asbestos or knob and tube wiring. But then I wouldn't have had the pleasure of finding century-old newspapers inside the walls, I countered, arranging copper pots on the hanging rack. Or discovering those children's drawings beneath 7 layers of wallpaper in the upstairs bedroom. Sophie rolled her eyes, but her expression softened as she glanced around the space. It is coming together nicely. I'll admit that. The kitchen renovation had been my first priority, a deliberate choice symbolizing nourishment, gathering creation. Next had come my bedroom suite, carved from 3 smaller rooms to create a sanctuary with a reading alcove overlooking the garden. The rest would follow in time. I was in no rush. The foundation office renovations are nearly complete too, I noted, checking my phone where the contractor had sent progress photos of the warehouse conversion. We should be able to move operations there next month. 2 major renovations simultaneously. Sophie shook her head. Only you would take on such massive projects while still recovering from surgery and testifying in high-profile federal cases. The work helps, I said simply. Concrete progress. Visible transformation. The doorbell interrupted our conversation. Jamie stood on the porch, looking uncharacteristically formal in a suit and tie, accompanied by a woman I recognized immediately. Despite never having met her in person, Georgia Reynolds, wife of Martin Reynolds, one of the developers arrested in the expanded investigation. She asked to speak with you, Jamie explained, his expression conveying both caution and curiosity. I vetted her carefully. She's alone, no recording devices. I hesitated, then nodded. Come in, please. Georgia Reynolds entered my home with the practiced grace of someone accustomed to society events and charity galas. Like Olivia, she fit the profile of the developer's wife, expensively but tastefully dressed, perfectly coiffed, wearing subtle designer signifiers recognizable to others in her social circle. Unlike Olivia, she had not left her husband following his arrest. She had stood beside him at arraignments and press conferences, the picture of loyal support. Thank you for seeing me, she said, accepting my offer of tea in the half-furnished living room. I'm sure this is unexpected. A bit, I acknowledged. How can I help you, Mrs. Reynolds? Georgia, please. She cupped her hands around the teacup, her wedding and engagement rings catching the afternoon light. I've been following your foundation's work, the financial literacy program in particular. I nodded, waiting for her to continue. Martin's case is proceeding toward a plea agreement, she explained, her voice carefully modulated. His attorney is confident about securing reasonable terms, but in the process of discovery, she faltered slightly. In the process, I've learned things I didn't know, about our finances, about decisions made without my knowledge or consent. Understanding dawned. You've discovered financial irregularities that affect you personally. Georgia nodded, relief evident in her expression. Accounts I didn't know existed. Properties transferred to shell companies. A prenuptial agreement amendment I supposedly signed 3 years ago, except... She withdrew a document from her handbag. Except this isn't my signature. I never saw this document until 2 weeks ago. I studied the signature, thinking of my own forged mortgage documents. Have you confronted Martin about this? He claims I signed it during a charity benefit, that I was distracted, signing multiple donor forms, and he slipped it in because he knew I would overreact if he brought it up directly. Her voice remained composed, but her knuckles whitened around the teacup. 22 years of marriage, and he speaks to me as if I'm a child throwing a tantrum over bedtime. Sophie had discreetly withdrawn to the kitchen, giving us privacy while remaining within earshot, a security precaution Jamie had insisted upon for any unexpected visitors. I'm not leaving Martin, Georgia said abruptly, as if anticipating my advice. That may seem incomprehensible to you, given your situation, but there are considerations beyond the financial betrayal, family connections, social standing, our children's well-being. I'm not here to judge your choices, I assured her. We all navigate these situations differently. She seemed to relax slightly. What I need is information, protection, a way to secure my financial future regardless of the outcome of Martin's case or any decisions I might make later. That's exactly what the Phoenix Foundation provides, I replied. Legal consultation, financial planning, documentation assistance, all confidential, all focused on establishing financial independence. And that's available even if I'm not leaving my husband, even if I'm not filing criminal charges for the forgery. Available to any woman in a financially vulnerable position, I confirmed. Our approach is non-judgmental. We provide information and resources. You make your own choices. Georgia set down her teacup with newfound resolve. When can I begin? Before the plea agreement is finalized, I need to understand exactly what assets exist, what I'm legally entitled to, what protections I can put in place. I reached for my phone, sending a quick text to Olivia. Our financial program director can meet with you tomorrow if that works. She has personal experience with similar situations. The former Mrs. Walters, Georgia noted. At my surprised, "Look," she added, "Portland's development community is small. Wives talk, even when our husbands would prefer we didn't." We arranged the meeting details, exchanged contact information, and discussed preliminary documentation Georgia should bring. As Jamie escorted her out, I remained in the living room, processing the encounter. Sophie returned from the kitchen. That was unexpected. But not surprising, I observed. Georgia Reynolds is exactly who we created this foundation for. Women. Discovering financial betrayal who need guidance regardless of whether they stay or leave. You handled it perfectly, Sophie said, pride evident in her voice. Non-judgmental, professional, supportive. I had good role models, I replied, squeezing her hand gratefully. That evening, as autumn darkness fell early, I sat in my partially renovated study, reviewing case updates from Marcus. The trials were proceeding methodically, some defendants pleading out, others preparing for court battles. Nate and Ethan continued cooperating, their testimony strengthening cases against bigger players in exchange for sentencing considerations. My phone rang, Caroline, calling unusually late. "I didn't wake you, did I?" she asked when I answered. "No, just reviewing case files. Everything okay?" "Yes and no," she replied cryptically. "I wanted to give you a heads up. The U.S. Attorney's Office will be announcing a major expansion of the investigation tomorrow. New indictments, new charges, expanding beyond Portland to development projects throughout the Pacific Northwest." I sat up straighter. Based on Nate's information? "Partly," Caroline confirmed. "And evidence from Prescott's servers. The scheme was more extensive than anyone initially realized. Similar patterns in Seattle, Tacoma, Boise. Coordinated efforts to manipulate municipal contracts, bribe officials, defraud investors. That's significant, I managed, grasping the scale of what had begun with my personal discovery. It also means renewed media attention, Caroline cautioned. Your name will likely resurface as the initial whistleblower. Are you prepared for that? I glanced around my study, half-unpacked boxes, paint samples taped to walls, renovation, plans spread across a makeshift desk, my life under construction, deliberately and methodically. "I'm prepared," I assured her. "The foundation is established now, with proper media protocols, and personally, I'm in a much stronger position than I was 6 months ago." "Good," Caroline sounded relieved. "There's one other thing. Nathan Mitchell has requested another meeting with you." My breath caught. "Why?" "He claims to have information about assets still hidden from investigators, assets that rightfully belong to you." I considered this, weighing possibilities. Is this legitimate, or another manipulation attempt? "Hard to say," Caroline admitted. "His cooperation has been genuine so far, invaluable to building the larger case." But when it comes to you specifically, his motivations are more complex. I finished for her. Exactly. You don't have to decide immediately. Think about it. Consult with Marcus if you'd like. After the call ended, I moved to the bay window overlooking the front garden, watching fallen leaves dance across the newly repaired walkway. The decision felt surprisingly easy. Schedule it, I texted Caroline. I want to know what he has to say. The expanded investigation dominated news cycles the following day, just as Caroline had predicted. My phone began ringing early, journalists seeking comments, former colleagues suddenly remembering our connection, even distant acquaintances curious about my involvement. Vanessa, now officially the Foundation's communications director, fielded most inquiries with practiced skill. Dr. Mitchell is focused on the Foundation's work and her ongoing cooperation with authorities, she repeated to each caller, redirecting attention to the Phoenix's mission rather than my personal story. By afternoon, I needed escape from the constant notifications. I drove to the Foundation's new headquarters, now in final stages of renovation. The warehouse conversion had proceeded faster than my home renovation, the space already taking shape, with distinct areas for each program. Olivia was there, directing furniture installation in the Financial Counseling Center. Her meeting with Georgia Reynolds that morning had apparently gone well. She brought complete documentation, Olivia reported as we walked through the space. Bank statements, property records, everything she could access. We're already identifying several irregularities beyond the forged prenup amendment. Will she take action? I asked. She's starting cautiously. Separate accounts, asset documentation, legal consultation. Not confronting Martin directly yet, but quietly securing her position. Olivia smiled slightly. Exactly what I wish I'd done years ago before things reached crisis point with Ethan. We continued the tour, checking progress in each section, the legal consultation rooms with soundproofing nearly complete, the childcare space awaiting final safety inspections, the community kitchen equipment scheduled for delivery next week. We'll be operational ahead of schedule, Olivia noted with satisfaction. The grant funds are stretching further than expected because of donated services. Those donations had come from unexpected quarters. Law firms offering pro bono hours, security companies providing discounted systems, construction companies contributing materials. The scandal had created ripple effects throughout Portland's business community, with many seeking to distance themselves from the corruption by supporting its antidote. Have you seen the latest research statistics? I asked, referring to the academic partnership we'd established with my former university. Financial abuse elements are present in nearly 98% of domestic violence cases. It's even more prevalent than we initially believed. Which makes this work even more essential, Olivia agreed. I've scheduled another training session for domestic violence shelter staff next month. The more they understand the financial components, the more effectively they can help clients achieve lasting independence. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Meeting with NM arranged for tomorrow, 10 a.m. Federal Building. Same security protocols as last time. Call me to discuss strategy. I showed the message to Olivia, who frowned slightly. Are you sure about this? Whatever information he has could probably be conveyed through attorneys. I'm sure, I confirmed. I need to see for myself if he's being truthful. If there are still hidden assets, I want to recover them. Not just for myself, but to add to the Foundation's resources. The security procedures for meeting Nate seemed even more stringent than before. The Federal Building corridors emptier, the conference room more isolated. Marcus accompanied me this time, his presence both legal, protection and emotional support. Remember, you're not obligated to continue the conversation if it becomes manipulative or unproductive, he reminded me as we waited. At any point, you can end the meeting. Nate looked marginally better than during our previous encounter. Prison. Pallor replaced with a slight tan from outdoor work detail, hair neatly trimmed, eyes clearer. The standard jumpsuit remained, as did the handcuffs, a visible reminder of his current reality. "Thank you for coming," he began, nodding acknowledgement. "DeMarcus, I wasn't sure you would. I'm told you have information about hidden assets," I replied, keeping my tone businesslike. "Assets that belong to me." "Yes?" He glanced at the federal attorney present, then back to me. "As part of my ongoing cooperation, I've been working with investigators to trace all funds from our various projects. Most have been identified and frozen for restitution, but there's one account I haven't disclosed yet." The federal attorney leaned forward. "Mr. Mitchell, if you've withheld information—" "Not withheld," Nate corrected carefully. "Saved. For this moment specifically." He returned his attention to me. "It's an account in Belize, opened in your name." My confusion must have shown. "I don't have accounts in Belize." "Not knowingly," he agreed. "I established it using your information, but you never directly accessed it. I've provided documentation proving I controlled it exclusively." Marcus intervened. "What's the significance of this particular account?" "It contains approximately $3.2 million, Nate explained. "Your inheritance money, Becca. The funds I took from our joint account after you deposited your grandmother's bequest. Plus the accumulated interest." I stared at him, processing this revelation. "You're saying you kept my inheritance separate from the other fraudulent activities? Why?" Nate shifted uncomfortably. "Because even at my worst, I couldn't bring myself to spend that money. It was meant for your future, your security. Taking it was—" He hesitated, seemingly searching for the right words. "Taking it crossed a line I hadn't planned to cross. So I isolated it, kept it untouched." The federal attorney looked skeptical. "Yet you didn't return it or disclose it until now." "I was going to use it as a bargaining chip," Nate admitted. "If things went south, if I needed leverage. Insurance, essentially." He met my gaze directly. "But that was before I understood the full consequences of my actions. Before I saw what you've built from the wreckage I created." "The Phoenix Foundation?" I surmised. He nodded. "It's making a difference. Real difference. The kind of impact I always talked about creating with my development projects, but never actually achieved." A hint of his old wry smile appeared. "Turns out you were better at changing the world than I ever was." Marcus remained pragmatic. "What exactly are you proposing regarding these funds?" "Full restitution," Nate replied simply. "The account details, access codes, everything needed to transfer the funds back to Becca. No conditions, no requests, no expectations of gratitude or leniency." "And why now?" the federal attorney asked, suspicion evident. "Because the investigation is expanding," Nate explained. "More defendants, more jurisdictions. My cooperation agreement value increases with each new indictment. I'm already getting the best deal I can reasonably expect. This isn't about reducing my sentence further." He turned to me again. "It's about making one thing right while I still can. You earned that inheritance. It should fund your work, your future, not sit in an offshore account as my last-ditch insurance policy." My emotions were complicated, anger at the original theft still present, but tempered by something unexpected. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition of a human attempt, however belated, to repair one small piece of extensive damage. "If everything checks out," I said finally, "I'll accept the restitution. The funds will primarily support the Foundation's programs." "I'd hope for nothing less," Nate replied. "The account documentation is all here." He nodded toward a folder the federal attorney now opened. Complete transaction history proving the money's source and confirming it remained untouched after deposit. The meeting concluded with technical details, transfer procedures, verification processes, timeline expectations. As guards prepared to escort Nate back to his cell, he paused. "One more thing," he said. addressing me directly. I heard about your Victorian renovation. Jamie mentioned it during his last intimidation visit. I raised an eyebrow, surprised both by Jamie's continued prison visits and Nate's knowledge of my new home. Check the attic access in the upstairs hallway, Nate continued. Old Victorians like that often have hidden compartments built into the walls. Previous owners might have left something interesting. With that cryptic suggestion, he was led away, leaving me to exchange bemused glances with Marcus. Was that helpful advice or some kind of psychological game? I wondered aloud as we left the federal building. With Nate, it could be either, Marcus observed, or both simultaneously. The autumn afternoon had turned gusty, leaves swirling across the courthouse steps as we descended. The expanded investigation announcement had drawn media attention. Several reporters lingered near the entrance, perhaps hoping to glimpse key witnesses or prosecutors. Keep walking, Marcus murmured. My car's just across the plaza. We had nearly reached the vehicle when a voice called out behind us. Dr. Mitchell, a comment on today's new indictments? I turned reflexively, recognizing the reporter from a local news station. Before I could respond with Vanessa's carefully crafted statement, a more urgent voice cut through the plaza. Rebecca. Caroline appeared from the building entrance, moving quickly toward us, flanked by 2 agents. Get in the car, now. Something in her tone brooked no argument. Marcus and I slid into his sedan as Caroline leaned in through the window. Drive directly to the safe house, she instructed Marcus. Do not stop, do not return to your home or office. I'll call with details once you're secure. What's happening? I asked, alarm rising as Marcus pulled away from the curb. Threat intercept, Caroline replied tersely. Possibly credible. Take precautions. As we merged into traffic, I glanced back to see Caroline already on her phone, the federal building receding behind us. Marcus drove with focused intensity, checking mirrors frequently, taking an indirect route that suggested counter-surveillance training. Do you think this is related to the expanded indictments? I asked, trying to make sense of the sudden security escalation. Likely, Marcus confirmed grimly. More defendants means more potential threats. Caroline wouldn't react this way to a general concern. The safe house, the same modernist cabin that had sheltered me during earlier phases of the investigation, looked unchanged as we approached. Federal agents discreetly positioned around the perimeter suggested the threat level remained significant. Inside, the space held an eerie familiarity. The same furniture, the same mountain views, the same sense of displacement at a moment of progress. History repeating, but with crucial differences. This time, I arrived not as a recently betrayed wife still healing from surgery, but as the founder of an established foundation, a key witness in a major federal investigation, a woman rebuilding on her own terms. Caroline called an hour later, her voice carefully controlled. We intercepted communications between associates of several defendants, she explained. Specific references to targeting witnesses, with your name mentioned prominently. Credible threat? Marcus asked, his legal training evident in his precise questioning. Credible enough to warrant protection, Caroline confirmed. We've made 2 arrests already, but until we're certain we've contained the entire threat network, we're maintaining security protocols. For how long? I asked, calculating foundation commitments, renovation schedules, personal obligations. A few days at minimum, Caroline replied. I've already briefed Vanessa and Olivia. Foundation operations continue under enhanced security. Your home renovation team has been temporarily cleared from the property, with security monitoring in place. After the call ended, I paced the cabin's living room, frustration building. Each time I established momentum, created progress, moved forward. Another security threat, another disruption, another reminder that the case continued to shape my life in ways beyond my control. This is different from last time, Marcus observed, accurately reading my expression. Last time, the threats caught us by surprise. This time, we intercepted them before they materialized. That's progress. Still feels like being pushed back into hiding, I countered, gesturing to the isolated cabin. Just when the foundation is about to open. Just when the house is coming together. Temporary setback, he insisted. And operationally, everything continues. Vanessa and Olivia are fully capable of managing day-to-day foundation matters. The renovation team will resume work as soon as security clears them. This is an inconvenience, not a derailment. His pragmatism helped reframe my perspective. This wasn't Nate controlling my movements through deception and manipulation. This was a calculated security measure, implemented transparently, with my full knowledge and consent. Not victimhood, but prudent protection. By evening, the cabin had filled with familiar faces, Sophie arriving with food from her restaurant, Jamie, bringing additional security equipment, Vanessa with foundation updates, Olivia with financial documents requiring review. The isolated safe house transformed into a temporary command center, the enforced pause becoming productive strategy time. Georgia Reynolds has agreed to join our advisory board, Olivia reported as we worked through foundation business. Her connections will be invaluable for fundraising, especially among the social circles that previously supported the corrupted development projects. And the first support group session had 12 participants, Vanessa added. Women from across the socioeconomic spectrum, all dealing with variations of financial control and abuse. Several have already scheduled follow-up consultations with our legal team. Progress continuing despite disruption. Impact expanding despite obstacles. The foundation's work transcending my personal situation. Late that night, after others had departed or settled into guest rooms, I stood on the cabin's deck watching stars emerge above distant mountains. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, pre-cleared through Caroline's security team. Your inheritance transfer complete. 347 Mawars now in Phoenix Foundation account. No strings attached. Use it well. And I stared at the message. Verification of Nate's unexpected restitution. The money wouldn't undo his betrayal or erase the trauma of discovery, but it would fund programs helping hundreds of women escape similar situations. Justice recycled into prevention, damage transformed into remedy. Another text arrived, this one from Caroline. Threat containment progressing. 3 more arrests. Security assessment in morning. Rest well. I saved both messages, tucked the phone away, and continued stargazing, finding unexpected peace in the enforced pause. Tomorrow would bring security assessments, foundation planning, renovation decisions. But tonight offered stillness, perspective, the chance to recognize how far I'd come from that rainy day of discovery. The mountain air carried the scent of pine and possibility, autumn's transformative energy palpable even in darkness. Things were torn down, rebuilt, reconfigured. Nature itself demonstrated how destruction created space for new growth, how fallen leaves nourished future blooming. Nate's cryptic mention of the Victorian attic returned to mind. What might previous owners have left behind? What history might the house still hold, waiting to be discovered? The thought felt suddenly significant, not just for what might physically exist in hidden compartments, but for what the process of discovering it represented. Life contained hidden compartments too, unexpected strengths revealed through crisis, capacities uncovered through challenge, resilience discovered through necessity. The betrayal that should have destroyed me had instead revealed aspects of myself previously untapped. The crisis that should have diminished me had expanded my impact instead. I returned inside, found a notepad, and began writing, not foundation. Plans or renovation schedules, but something more personal. The story of transformation, of rising from ashes. The narrative that would help others recognize their own capacity for rebirth. When my husband sold our home while I was in surgery, he thought he was ending my story. Instead, he was unwittingly providing the catalyst for its most powerful chapter. 1 year after discovering the sold sign on my lawn, I stood in the restored third-floor library of my Victorian, watching winter sunlight stream through leaded glass windows. The house renovation had finally reached this space, my sanctuary. Custom bookshelves lined the walls, a window seat overlooked the garden now dormant under frost, and the original fireplace crackled with warmth. The attic compartment Nate had cryptically mentioned had indeed existed, a small hidden panel revealed during renovation. Inside, we'd found a collection of letters from the 1920s, correspondence between the original lady of the house and a sister living abroad. These fragments of another woman's life now sat preserved in an archival box on my desk, a reminder that every home held stories, that walls witnessed both betrayals and triumphs long before my own. My phone rang, Olivia calling from the Foundation headquarters. "Just confirming you'll be at the 6-month assessment meeting tomorrow," she said when I answered. "The program directors have prepared comprehensive impact reports." "I'll be there," I assured her. "How are the numbers looking?" "Extraordinary," Olivia replied, satisfaction evident in her voice. "Over 200 women served through direct programs, financial literacy workshops at capacity with wait lists, legal consultation services expanding to satellite locations throughout the region." "And the residential program?" I asked, referring to the newly launched emergency housing initiative providing temporary accommodations for women fleeing financially abusive situations. "Currently at 80% occupancy, which is optimal for individualized support delivery," she reported. "The success metrics are particularly compelling. 70% of participants transition to independent housing within our targeted timeframe." After ending the call, I returned to the window seat, taking in both the winter landscape outside and the restored room around me. The house, like my life, had transformed gradually. Not all at once, not without setbacks, but systematically, purposefully until original integrity emerged strengthened by thoughtful updates. The doorbell chimed distantly from the first floor. I wasn't expecting visitors, but security protocols had relaxed considerably since the expanded case arrests had all been processed. The preliminary threats had been contained, the primary defendants had accepted plea deals, and the federal investigation had become routine rather than emergency. I descended the grand staircase, one of the first elements I'd restored, each spindle carefully stripped of decades of paint to reveal original craftsmanship, and opened the front door to find Caroline on my porch, looking more casual than I'd ever seen her in jeans and a practical winter coat. "Sorry to drop by unannounced," she greeted me. I was in the neighborhood and wanted to deliver some news in person rather than over the phone. I welcomed her inside, leading her to the living room where renovation had been completed months earlier. "Good news or concerning news?" I asked, offering coffee. "Definitively good," she assured me, accepting the coffee gratefully. "The final sentencing recommendations have been filed. Prescott, Denton, and Reynolds are looking at 12 to 15 years each. The corrupt city officials slightly less, depending on cooperation levels." "And Nate?" I asked, the question still complicated after all this time. 8 years, Caroline replied. "Reduced from the original 12 based on his extensive cooperation. With good behavior, he could be out in 6. I absorbed this information, finding myself strangely devoid of strong reaction. Nate's sentence, once so central to my sense of justice, now felt like a detail in a much larger narrative. Important, but no longer defining. "The asset recovery is nearly complete as well," Caroline continued. "Final restitution distributions should process next month. Between your personal recovery and the Foundation's designated portion, the Phoenix will receive approximately $11 million total." This news did elicit emotion, not for the monetary value, but for the impact potential. $11 million would fund expansion to other cities, research initiatives to better understand financial abuse patterns, policy advocacy work to strengthen legal protections. "The Foundation board meeting to determine fund allocation is next week," I told her. We're prioritizing prevention programs and rural outreach. Caroline nodded approvingly. I've been referring cases your way. Women identified during other investigations, situations where financial evidence suggests control patterns. Your programs fill a critical gap in the support system. We chatted a while longer about foundation developments, case closures, the gradual return to normalcy as the investigation phases concluded. As Caroline prepared to leave, she paused, in the entryway, studying me with professional assessment. You look well, she observed. At peace even after everything. Not despite everything, I corrected gently. Because of everything. The foundation work gives meaning to what happened. The house renovation symbolizes rebuilding. Even the ongoing case developments represent justice progressing, systems working as they should. Outside, snow had begun, falling lightly, dusting the restored porch railings, the new walkway, the garden beds prepared for spring planting. Caroline departed with promises to attend the foundation's upcoming fundraising gala, leaving me to return to my library sanctuary. The research I'd been conducting before Olivia's call waited on my laptop. Data analysis from the foundation's first 6 months, patterns emerging about how financial abuse manifested across different relationships, socioeconomic backgrounds, life stages. My medical research skills had translated surprisingly well to this new field, the methodical approach to evidence and outcomes serving the Foundation's mission perfectly. My phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Monthly dinner still on for tonight? Bringing that wine from the Yamhill vineyard you liked. I confirmed our plans, smiling at the ongoing tradition that had sustained me through the most difficult phases of the past year. Sophie and Jamie, Vanessa, Olivia, Marcus, even Caroline had become regular attendees at these monthly gatherings, my chosen family assembled around my dining table, supporting not just my healing, but the Foundation's evolution. As evening approached, I prepared for their arrival, setting the restored dining table with my grandmother's china saved from the storage unit, arranging flowers from a local sustainable greenhouse, lighting candles in vintage holders discovered during the renovation. The house, once merely a structure I'd purchased as an act of reclamation, had become truly home, infused with new memories, new traditions, new purpose. Sophie arrived first, Jamie close behind carrying wine and dessert. Vanessa and Marcus came together, having worked late finalizing legal details for the Foundation's expansion. Olivia brought Georgia Reynolds, now a regular presence at both Foundation events and personal gatherings, her quiet dignity and evolving confidence a testament to the power of information and support. As we settled around the table, conversations, flowing easily between professional updates and personal anecdotes, I found myself momentarily observing rather than participating, taking in the tableau of connection that had emerged from catastrophe. These relationships, this purpose, this home, none would exist had Nate not betrayed me that rainy day a year ago. You're quiet, Sophie noted, passing the roasted vegetables she'd brought from her restaurant. Everything okay? More than okay, I assured her, just appreciating the moment. The conversation turned to foundation matters, Georgia describing a new financial literacy curriculum she'd developed for high school students, Marcus updating everyone on legislative advocacy efforts, Olivia sharing success stories from recent program graduates. We've been contacted by groups in Seattle and Denver interested in establishing similar programs, Vanessa reported. The model is replicable, with local adaptations, of course. Which brings us to an important question, Olivia added, glancing my way. With expansion opportunities arising, we need to consider leadership structure. Rebecca, the board is unanimous in wanting you to transition to full-time executive director. The offer shouldn't have surprised me. I'd been functioning in the role unofficially for months, gradually reducing my research hours at the medical center. Yet the formal acknowledgement represented another significant transition. My research position, I began, thinking of the immunotherapy studies I'd returned to post-recovery, can be adjusted to consulting status. Marcus suggested. The university values the prestige of keeping you affiliated while understanding your foundation commitment. You've built something extraordinary, Georgia added quietly. Something essential that didn't exist before. Women need your leadership in this space. I looked around the table at these people who had supported my journey from victim to advocate, from betrayed wife to independent force. Their belief in me had never wavered, even when my own confidence faltered during the darkest moments. I'll accept, I decided, with one condition, that we create a proper leadership team structure. Olivia as financial director, Vanessa heading communications and development, Georgia leading educational programs. A collaborative approach from women with complementary expertise. Glasses raised in approval, the decision celebrated alongside the meal. As dinner progressed to dessert, Jamie unexpectedly cleared his throat for attention. Since we're sharing foundation news, he began, uncharacteristically nervous. Sophie and I have an announcement too. Sophie blushed slightly as all eyes turned their way. We're engaged, she revealed, extending her hand to display a vintage emerald ring. Finally made it official last weekend. Exclamations and congratulations erupted around the table. I embraced, my sister, joy overwhelming me at her happiness after years of supporting mine. The wedding will be small, she explained as celebration quieted. Just family and closest friends. Here, actually, if Becca approves. The garden should be perfect by spring. Here? I repeated, touched beyond words. Of course. Nothing would make me happier. As the evening concluded and guests departed with warm embraces and plans for future gatherings, I returned to the library, drawn to its peaceful ambiance. The day had brought multiple circles of completion, final sentencing recommendations, foundation leadership formalized, my sister's long relationship culminating in engagement. At my desk, the unfinished manuscript of my book waited, Financial Freedom, Recognizing and Escaping Economic Control. The publisher had approached me after a national news feature on the foundation, offering a platform to share both personal experience and professional insights. Writing had proven therapeutic, translating trauma into educational resource, private, pain into public benefit. I opened the document, scrolling to the conclusion chapter still under development. The words began flowing with newfound clarity. Transformation isn't single moment, but ongoing process. The woman who discovered betrayal while still weak from surgery isn't the same woman writing these words today. Pain changed me. Justice shaped me. Purpose defined me. But most significantly, the act of rebuilding, deliberately, thoughtfully, surrounded by chosen support, created someone stronger than before. When my husband sold our home while I was in surgery, he believed he was executing power over me. In reality, he was unwittingly catalyzing my power within. The structures we believe define us, marriages, homes, financial arrangements, may prove more fragile than we imagined. But our capacity to recover, to rebuild on foundations of truth and integrity, proves more resilient than any betrayal. I paused, considering the journey from that first shocking discovery to this moment of peace and purpose. The Phoenix Foundation now helped hundreds of women recognize financial abuse, escape controlling relationships, establish independence. My Victorian home stood restored and filled with new warmth. My medical research continued in modified capacity, cancer patients benefiting from protocols I'd helped develop. None of this erased what Nate had done. The betrayal remained historical fact, the violation of trust a reality that had shaped me. But its power to define me had diminished with each deliberate choice to transform damage into purpose, to recycle pain into prevention for others. Outside, snow continued falling gently, transforming the landscape with quiet persistence. Inside, firelight cast warm shadows across restored woodwork, illuminating the space I had claimed and healed. The contrast felt poetically appropriate. Cold. Reality outside, hard-won warmth within. Both necessary, both beautiful in their way. I returned to writing, narrative flowing with restored clarity. The phoenix rises not by forgetting the fire, but by incorporating it. Ash becoming part of new feathers, the experience of burning informing the miracle of flight. We rise not, despite our wounds, but with them, transformed not by erasure of pain, but by its integration into our stronger, wiser selves. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass. These up. Just click and check them out.